Vanessa Chavarría. Luisa Delgado. Frances Dandes. Anya Ruby. María José Sánchez. Kate Shannon. Tupper. Vanessa Valverde. Tracy Waters. María Fernanda Gamboa. Adriana Sangil. class of 2013. You can now place your tassels to the left. Let's give them a round of applause. Thank you all for your participation.
I would like to introduce our main speaker, Professor John Mordell.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is John Mordell. I am from Bridgewater State College, a sister college to Framingham. And I bring with me greetings from Marianne Normandin and Joyce Fahey, both of Framingham State University, and they wanted to wish you well and congratulate everyone. Alberto asked me to give a short speech, and when I was coming over here, after thinking about my speech and what I wanted to say, in addition to congratulations, the driver knew that I was giving a speech. Nancy had already told him that I was speaking at this graduation ceremony. And even my driver knew. He said, let me give you some advice. Keep it short. Now, I've attended more than 50 graduation exercises in my career. I became a college professor in 1990. And you can imagine, I've sat through 50 graduations. And every time I sat through, I had two questions. First question I had was, and I bet you all have the same question, how long will he speak for? I promise you it'll be short. Second question I had was, will this person who's speaking say anything memorable? And I can also tell you that I've sat through 50 graduations and I can remember one of what somebody said. It was a US congressman who basically said, graduation speakers are like corpses at funerals. They're supposed to be there, but they're not supposed to say much. So I won't say, except what I want to do is to tell you, just remind the graduates of one thing. We as teachers make a difference. So I want to tell you about one day in my life. It was September 24th, 2004. Now, I can tell you that 19 years ago, I came to Costa Rica to teach at the San Jose cohort or the Lincoln cohort. 19 years ago was this month. And the story that I want to tell you is a little bit about falling in love with Costa Rica, and a little bit about learning about myself. I came here and I couldn't stay out of the gift shops. I bought coffee for my mother, wooden boxes in the shapes of frogs and apples, paper made out of banana leaves. I don't even know who I gave that to. I bought t-shirts for my children, and I bought 50 wooden necklaces or bracelets for people that I thought would really enjoy them. Of course, when I got back home, I realized that I didn't actually have 50 people that would really enjoy them. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Every year when I teach in the International Framingham program, or every time I teach, I always pack on the Wednesday before I leave. And when I pack, I have to figure out how to get everything that I bought into my suitcases and come back home. And what I realized is I couldn't fit all of the recent purchases into my suitcase along with all of the materials that I had brought to Costa Rica. So I made a silly decision. I gave all of my books and materials away to all of my students. Probably cost me $1,000. And I would walk up to each one of my students and say, I have a book. After sitting here with you in the issues and philosophy course, it was actually the philosophy course, it was an educational leadership. I want to give you this book because it sounds like a book that you would really find useful. And I did that to every student, although obviously I was doing it because I couldn't bring it home. So I tell you that story because 10 years later, 2003, I got an email from one of my students. Now, email didn't even exist when I first met her in 1994, January. 10 years later, I get an email, and it begins, Dear John. I don't usually like Dear John letters, but it began, Dear John, and it started and said, I want you to know that you changed my life. And she went on to tell me how she started as, in my class, she was a public school teacher in the Framingham program. She left, eventually taught for a few more years in the public school, became a principal in the public school. Eventually, she left the public school, became a private school teacher, eventually became a principal in the private school, and eventually, along with somebody else, opened the school in Costa Rica, based on the book that I had given her. It was called Frames of Mind by Howard Gardner. And the day that she wrote me the email, when she said, you changed my life, she wrote in saying that Howard Gardner had just been down to visit her school. Imagine the impact I had, simply because I had too many necklaces in my suitcase. That very same day, I was so excited. I was going home and I wanted to tell my wife about this experience that I had where a student that I had not communicated with for 10 years still felt something special. So I went home, stopped at the end of my driveway, went into my mailbox, and in my mailbox I grabbed a letter. And that letter was a 7-page, 2-sided, handwritten letter from a kid who is now a young adult. He was in his early 20s. I hadn't seen him since he was 16. And his letter began, Dear Mr. Marvell, I want you to know that you saved my life. And he went on in 7 2-sided handwritten pages to tell me how I changed his life and saved his life because he was on the verge of killing himself. And he knew that I cared about him. There was a kid in the neighborhood that used to come to our house and play with my daughter. And he would just hang around the house, and I would do things. If I was going to an event with my daughter, I would ask if she I would say, Kim, do you want to go to see the Patriots play? Or do you want to go see the Red Sox play? Or do you want to go to a museum? And she'd say, that's all right. I'd say, Mark, you want to come? And Mark would say, yeah, can I go? And I'd say, Kimberly, Mark's coming. And she'd go, okay, I'll go. So Mark actually helped me. I got a chance to do things with my daughter. September 24th, 2004. One letter that says, you changed my life. And one letter that says, you saved my life. We make a difference. I was lucky. I found out 2 incredible things on the same day. Perhaps many other times I believed that those things were happening, I just never found out. I'm guessing probably all of those things happened and you just never found out. But on one day I found out the difference that I make. So when I walk down the halls and say hi to my students, when I ask a tough question in class, I know that I have the possibility of making a huge difference in their life when I show that I care. I think about, let's start. I'm guessing that some of you might know the name of Annie Sullivan. You're probably thinking, who's Annie Sullivan? But perhaps nobody immediately jumps to the name, but many of you would know the name Helen Keller. Helen Keller was deaf and blind. You can imagine what a tough world that was. And Helen Keller had a teacher named Annie Sullivan. Annie Sullivan was able to make a breakthrough with Helen Keller, to break into her and help her learn language. And eventually Helen Keller went on, grew up, went to school, eventually went to Radcliffe, which is part of Harvard now, graduated as the first person in the United States to have a bachelor's degree for a person who was deaf and blind. Many of you might have seen the movie called Miracle Worker, and some of you might even know the name Helen Keller. But how many of us know the name of the teacher of Martin Luther King, Mahatma Gandhi, Mother Teresa? I could probably name 100 people that we wouldn't have a clue of the name of the teachers. Perhaps not even the idea that, and I'm confident that Barack Obama, President of the United States, had a teacher that, unknown to us, that made a difference in his life, that helped him realize that with hard work and vision, he could change the world. So, little message from me, remember every day to keep envisioning our classroom, keep envisioning a better world, and keep working with our students to make that better world. Congratulations, graduate. Thank you for letting me share the day with you.
Thank you all for your participation. Now let's stand up to say farewell to the alumni.
Do we want the alumni to come back up on stage and have pictures?
Sure.
Right? If they'd like to come back up. Yeah, getting back.
Only out 35 minutes.
Okay, you guys want to try a half throwing one? There we go. I'll count. Ready? Everyone listen to me. 1, 2, 3. Do it. Throw it.
No, it doesn't. Even off the stage. Are you kidding?
Alberto.
Go back moment here.
Put it behind you. Oh.
Que está la cámara de John. Got some clear here. Here we go. 1, 2, 4.
Yeah? Thank you. Oh, no, no, no. That was fine. That was fine. That was fine. Okay. Hey, you're lucky I didn't say, hey, we don't need to speak.
Hi.
I get it.
No, it's fine. No, I got it.
Why are you following?
brother.